Have you ever wondered why the dumbest voices speak the loudest? And why the wisest people say the least? Why the more intelligent your thoughts become, the more alone you feel? Why does truth sound like hate, and stupidity sounds like virtue? This isn't an accident. The world you live in doesn't reward thinking anymore. It punishes it. Wisdom used to be power. Now it's a threat. And if you've ever looked around and thought, "Am I the only one who sees how insane this is?" You're not wrong. You're just surrounded by a system that's been carefully designed to make stupidity feel safe and wisdom feel dangerous. This is not a culture. It's a psychological trap. And once you see it, you can never go back. There was a time when the wise man was feared, when his silence made the powerful uneasy, when people listened, not because he was loud, but because he understood something they didn't. Wisdom wasn't entertainment. It was threat. It cut through illusions, exposed lies, challenged delusions. But in the modern world, the wise man has gone silent, not because he has nothing left to say, but because no one wants to hear it. The truth has become offensive. Reflection is considered arrogance. And ignorance? It's now a brand, a lifestyle, a badge of honor. The world no longer hides from stupidity. It celebrates it. We live in a time where intelligence is measured by the speed of your opinion, not the depth of your thought. In this new marketplace of visibility, it's not the thoughtful who rise, but the reactive. Loudness has replaced logic. Clicks have replaced contemplation. Nuance is now a liability. You're expected to speak quickly, simplify everything, and take a side, even if you understand nothing about what you're talking about. And if you don't, you're labeled weak, indecisive, irrelevant. So the wise retreat while the fools dominate. But how did this happen? How did we go from revering Socrates to idolizing influencers? From meditating on truth to repeating slogans? The answer is simple, but brutal. Wisdom has no place in a world built on constant stimulation. It is too slow, too subtle, too quiet. It demands something the modern man can barely tolerate: discomfort. Real thinking is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront contradictions, admit ignorance, and delay conclusions. But in a culture addicted to instant validation, this feels like death. So instead, people rush to whatever makes them feel good now, even if it costs them clarity later. The death of wisdom didn't begin with censorship. It began with distraction. When people stopped reading to understand and started reading to react. When every thought had to be compressed into a post, a meme, or a viral clip. When the world became too loud to hear your own mind. And slowly, stupidity, not as a lack of knowledge, but as a refusal to reflect, became the dominant mode of existence. People no longer ask, "Is it true?" They ask, "Does it agree with my feelings?" And if it doesn't, they don't argue, they attack. The wise man is dangerous precisely because he doesn't speak to please. He speaks to reveal. But in a society trained to fear discomfort, anyone who dares point out the lie becomes the enemy. That's why wisdom isn't banned. It's drowned. In comedy, controversy, gossip, noise. And the most terrifying part? Most people don't even know it's happening. They don't miss wisdom because they've never tasted it. They confuse data for knowledge, charisma for credibility, agreement for truth. The celebration of stupidity is not random. It is strategic, because a population that can't think deeply is easy to manipulate. They won't question authority. They'll follow trends. They won't demand justice. They'll demand entertainment. They won't build themselves. They'll build identities. And that's exactly what the architects of the modern world want. A culture of easily distracted, emotionally fragile, intellectually sedated individuals who believe freedom is the ability to scroll, not the ability to think. This is why the modern wise man often looks like a ghost. He walks among people, but rarely speaks. He watches the world fight over illusions, knowing that most would rather win an argument than understand the truth. He learns to protect his inner clarity, because he knows if he throws it to the crowd, they'll trample it. Not because they're evil, but because they're addicted. Addicted to simplicity. Addicted to stimulation. Addicted to being right. And wisdom offers none of those things. It only offers the one thing people secretly fear the most: responsibility. Because true wisdom always comes with a price. Once you see clearly, you can't unsee. Once you understand the lie, you're obligated to stop living in it. Once you gain insight, you're expected to act with integrity. And that terrifies people. It's easier to pretend you're confused than admit you know what's right and still choose what's easy. That's why stupidity is so attractive. It gives you an excuse to stay comfortable. But comfort kills something deeper than pain ever could: your capacity for truth. So the question is not, why is the world celebrating stupidity? The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you join the circus, wear the mask, and clap for the performance? Or will you step back, turn inward, and resurrect the lost art of thinking, even if no one claps for it? Because in a world drowning in noise, the man who chooses silence, depth, and clarity becomes rare. And in his rarity, he becomes powerful. Wisdom isn't gone. It's just quiet now, waiting for those few who still have the courage to listen. If you've ever spoken the truth and watched a room go quiet, not out of understanding, but out of discomfort, you've seen the death of wisdom firsthand. The modern mind doesn't want truth. It wants sedation wrapped in opinion. The wise man is no longer admired. He is feared, then ignored. And this tells you something brutal about the world you live in. Truth no longer serves power. In fact, truth now threatens it. That's why the system doesn't need to kill wisdom violently. It only needs to make it irrelevant. Turn the wise into ghosts. Let them whisper into a storm of stupidity until they disappear. The truth is, stupidity is not the absence of intelligence. It is the absence of courage. The courage to confront yourself, to question your instincts, to tolerate contradiction. But the modern world does not breed courage. It breeds comfort. From birth, people are trained to seek approval, not understanding. To believe in consensus, not clarity. Schools teach facts, but not thinking. Media gives opinions, not inquiry. The result? A world full of adults who've never developed a relationship with reality, only with narratives. And whoever controls the narrative controls the people. Wisdom requires solitude. But modern life is built to destroy solitude. You're kept busy, distracted, overstimulated, always reacting, never reflecting. Why? Because if you ever stopped and sat in silence long enough, you might begin to see. You might begin to ask, why do I believe this? Who benefits from my obedience? What am I missing? And those questions are dangerous, not just for society, but for you. Because once you see the lie, you can't go back to sleep. You'll never again feel safe in stupidity. You'll feel alone. And that is the great punishment of modern wisdom: exile. You don't get burned at the stake anymore. You just get uninvited, disconnected, shadow banned, labeled difficult, problematic, negative. The world doesn't debate you. It deletes you, because debate assumes both sides want truth. But in a society that rewards surface and emotion, debate is useless. People don't want to be persuaded. They want to be affirmed. And anyone who challenges their identity is treated as a threat, not a teacher. This is why stupidity spreads faster than fire, because it flatters everyone. It tells the insecure they're wise. It tells the lazy they're good enough. It tells the lost they're already home. But wisdom does the opposite. It makes you uncomfortable. It exposes your ignorance. It demands growth. And so most people abandon it. Not because they can't understand, but because they won't sacrifice for it. Because wisdom doesn't make you feel powerful. It makes you feel responsible. And there lies the core reason wisdom is dying. Power has shifted. In ancient times, wisdom was power. The man who understood nature, self, and strategy could outthink armies. He was rare, and his rarity made him valuable. But today, power belongs to the algorithm, to attention, to the most visible, not the most insightful. So the wise are no longer needed, just the entertaining, the persuasive, the agreeable. The masses don't want to be led to truth. They want to be led to pleasure. But this is where the story turns dark, because civilizations do not die from war or poverty. They die from decay, from the slow erosion of meaning, memory, and morality. When stupidity becomes tradition and wisdom becomes taboo, collapse is not a matter of if, but when. The Romans laughed at philosophers before they fell. The Greeks dismissed Socratic questioning before they drowned in decadence. Every empire that rejected wisdom paid the price, and we are not the exception. Yet within this decay, a new role for the wise man is born. He is no longer a leader of crowds. He is a builder of individuals. He doesn't shout in public. He sharpens minds in secret. His power is not in numbers, but in depth. He trains the few who can still think, who still value silence, who still see through the noise. He teaches not how to fit into the world, but how to survive above it, with clarity, detachment, and ruthless perception. He understands what the rest do not, that in an age of manufactured idiocy, to think clearly is an act of war. So if you still care about truth, if you still crave meaning, you must first stop looking for it in the noise. Stop expecting wisdom from the crowd. The crowd has no wisdom. It only has emotion. You must retreat, read, reflect, question. Surround yourself not with those who agree, but those who challenge. Learn to become dangerous through understanding, not through domination. And above all, learn to carry your insight alone, because most won't understand, and many will resent you for having it. You will be tempted to become like them, to shrink your thoughts, to simplify your speech, to pretend you don't see what you see. Resist that, because once you surrender your mind to comfort, you've already lost the war. The world will tell you you're too serious, that you think too much, that you should just enjoy life. But remember, the path of wisdom has always been a lonely one, not because it lacks beauty, but because it demands honesty. And honesty costs more than most are willing to pay. So let them celebrate stupidity. Let them drown in noise. Let them crown fools and mock philosophers. It doesn't matter. Because in the end, when the world finally breaks, as all empires of illusion eventually do, it won't be the popular who rebuild it. It will be the ones who remembered, the ones who kept their minds sharp, the ones who watched quietly while others danced into oblivion. The world may have forgotten wisdom, but that doesn't mean you have to. In a world that rewards lies and punishes thought, the wise man has only one option. Don't shout louder. Think deeper, because when stupidity becomes the law of the land, clarity becomes a weapon, and silence becomes your survival strategy.